But yeah, the last Advance Wars was Nintendo DS in 2005. I said 6. Excuse me.
Is that when Black Hole Setting?
I'm not going to answer that question. Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where 3 guys spend 7 days playing one old game, and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
And this is episode 438. Question of the week. What is a bad game with an amazing OST?
I didn't know it, but I was waiting on this question. I have a really good answer.
It was just ruminating in the depths of your heart.
Yeah, because
I like that you had a good answer. I had a hard time coming up with something.
If you don't already have an answer, it's a hard question. It is. Because most games that are good have passable to really good soundtracks, but flipping
and most games that are bad have really bad soundtracks.
Yeah, exactly. So
generally,
my answer is Sonic Racing, Sonic R.
I would put any Sonic up there.
Stop it. Sonic Racing.
No, not stop it.
For those of you
Sonic is the only thing I could come up with too. Like, that was my answer, was later Sonic games. I didn't have a specific title.
Didn't even fans hate Sonic, like, 06? What is it called? Sonic?
Yeah.
Something like that? Well, and I bet that had Sonic has good music, you know?
All of them have good music, but at some point when they left the 2D gotta go fast vibe that is good and that Dustin hates for no reason, there were some misses in there.
But y'all don't. If you haven't seen Sonic R, go look at it. It is really cursed.
Is it super bad?
It's a racing game where you're.
That sounds good.
It's 3D, and this is how you look racing.
Oh.
Like you're running. It's not like cool looking.
That
has
sounds terrible.
One of the best theme songs in any game.
Wow.
Can You Feel the Sunshine? And it is.
Tonight.
Just go look it up. It's a good answer. Okay.
Kenny, yours is Sonic as well?
Yeah, like I was just thinking of franchises that I thought would have good music, but that fell off, and that was the only one I could come up with.
Which Sonic?
I'm sure there's like specific games, and even ones on the podcast we've played.
Kenny's only played the Sonic games on the podcast, so like.
Then I don't accept it. I'm sick of this Sonic hate, TBH, from both of you.
Well, I don't hate.
I do not.
Y'all both do.
I respect. I think he's got a great design. I've got 2 from our catalog.
Oh,
okay.
I'm interested in these because I was trying to think of some.
One I think is one that you didn't actually play, if I recall, Nolan. I might be wrong. I just know there's a few games from our history that you couldn't get playing, like literally just 1 or 2. But Streets of SimCity. Pretty trash game.
Any of us could.
we all struggled.
No, I played it, but you know how when you're playing a PC game and it's like working off of like the speed of your current computer,
yes.
So like things are just super fast.
It's just like chipmunk voices and stuff.
But the soundtrack is pretty good, but the game is pretty busted.
Sim soundtracks tend to be pretty solid, yeah.
Oh yeah, Sim. I think you could do a few. Like honestly, I remember us not being pleased with the original SimCity. Like I'm not talking about the Super
console.
Nintendo one. I'm talking about on the console.
Yeah.
I don't remember the music there, but you're right. Sim games tend to have pretty good music.
But they're also generally pretty good games. Generally.
And then another one that Kenny might agree with me. Nolan will disagree on part of it, but you will both agree that it's got a banger soundtrack.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
I nailed it. I knew you were going to say that.
So
it's literally his songs, but chip-tuned.
Which is so fun. And was not, you're right, it wasn't like a great game, even though Nolan was weirdly
And that
involved with
alone should make that game good to y'all. Like that, y'all underappreciate.
No, there's some other hard boundaries and borders that like it crosses.
No, it's a great game. You rescue kids from trunks. Why wouldn't you want to do that? You must be a bad person.
Although these games have amazing OSTs, unfortunately the games are whack and droll themselves. Whack and droll. Whack, droll. Whack, droll. Black hole. Everybody say it with me. Whack, droll.
No,
black hole. I haven't done a rhyming one in a long time.
You should never do another one.
So bad.
Rhymezone.com.
That might be your worst transition of all time.
Like in our retro game of the week, Advance Wars 2, Black Hole Rising.
Overview.
Advance Wars 2, Black Hole Rising.
It's whack droll.
Don't. It's so bad. Don't ever talk about it again. Turn-based strategy game.
Oh.
You thought we were still talking about your joke and not the game?
Not real-time
week?
strategy like you said in the first play?
Listen, I said a lot of things in the first play that you should ignore and pretend never happened. This game was developed by Intelligent Systems.
Shout out.
It came out
Goats.
on the GBA and was published by Nintendo.
Nolan, massive shout out. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Intelligent Systems is the folks that do Fire Emblem,
yeah.
which is why Nolan is
They're the
excited.
folks that make
It
good
makes-
games, actually.
And makes so much sense when you see this game.
Of course, but like that's the least of my impressiveness right now. Like because I'd known that, and obviously when you play this game, you're like Fire Emblem, or you play Fire Emblem knowing Advance Wars, you're like Advance Wars. They're very comparable, right?
Yeah.
Reason it's supposed to be, but I looked up the other games that Intelligent Systems did, and we've played a lot of them.
Hit me.
They also did WarioWare Inc. Mega Party games.
Which Nolan loves.
It's on
They're-
my top.
Also responsible for the Paper Mario series, and we played Super Paper Mario.
Which Nolan loves.
They are responsible for Metroid and Super Metroid?
Which Nolan
Oh.
loves.
You can say something, Nolan, but no. I'll
Maybe.
What do you what?
Not
What?
a direct. Not in the
I'm
intelligent
on
system.
Metroid's page right now, and it says that it was developed by Nintendo Research and Development, right? The R&D one,
Okay.
and Intelligent
Okay.
Systems.
Interesting. Sure. That was before they were as well known as like
Yes,
a studio,
absolutely.
but that's
Absolutely.
really interesting to know. I didn't know that.
Even Wild Gunman, which you're probably not going to remember, but it was our first light gun game that we played on the podcast.
I do remember.
Like all of those are SimCity, the
Yeah.
original SimCity. Like
Okay, that's the combo breaker. I was gonna say Intelligent Systems makes games for Nolan.
I think there's a
But I'm
SimCity
gonna
that
just-
Nolan would enjoy.
Sure.
I'm gonna just pivot and say they make well-loved classic known games.
Like my top 5 on this console are from them. Like they're insane.
You said this console. I still don't know what my current relationship is with
I
the
know,
GBA.
man.
It's your favorite. It just has some duds.
I've been taken advantage of and abused recently because I think the last GBA game we played was BattleBots Beyond the Battle Box.
Stop it.
Sure. Here's the thing.
Shovelware.
You don't stop loving something just because it gives you something bad.
That'll preach. Yeah,
But I'm not
Dustin, I
married
wrote
to
down GBA Redemption arc for Dustin.
Yeah.
That's
if,
why I'm
see.
excited.
if the person you were married to gave you a bad birthday gift, you would still love her.
Or him.
Sorry, what?
If this, we will see. Look, I will let my relationship with the GBA be determined by what this game ends up being for me. If it is a good and exciting,
You
welcoming,
say that because you've already played the game.
Listen,
right?
I-
But y'all don't know.
I'm always excited at first when a childhood game pops up when you announce it, but then I remember that sometimes y'all are idiots, and so I'm
So this is a childhood game or series from you?
series. Although I dabbled with this specific game, I have a lot more experience with the first one. So it's interesting that we pulled the sequel.
And it is, of course, Kenny and Dustin's first time playing the series.
Sure,
Yeah.
it's not a
we're
big series, but yeah.
brand new to Advance Wars. And I like that you point out this is a sequel, because this is a sequel and one of the truest sequels we've gotten yet. It is very similar gameplay, almost verbatim the same game, just more of it. I think you have a couple of your COs, a couple leaders that were added, some slightly different terrain. Like, we'll get into some of the differences, but it's
And gameplay.
basically, it's basically the same game. But it also just continues the story. There is this ongoing war between these allied nations and the Black Hole Army, which is where Black Hole Rising comes from. Still a terrible title, but at least has some context.
A terrible
And-
subtitle. Advance Wars
Yes.
is good,
Yeah,
especially for the GBA.
it's okay. The confusion between whether it should be advanced or advanced, it makes it
my
a little
gosh,
bit
this
not as good of
guy.
a title as it should be. Regardless, the Black Hole Army is launching a large-scale invasion once again on Macroland. They've recovered from their initial war in the first game on Cosmoland, and you're taking your leaders and piloting armies to defeat the enemy.
In a real-time strategy game.
It's not real time. Quit throwing me under the bus.
We now have a bonus episode exclusive for those on Patreon.
Episode is not an over-exaggeration. It's a full episode.
And it's an episode that you get to be a part of.
Yeah, it's called Expansion Pack, and semi-regularly you get to be a part of the conversation. And we're going to debate, and we're going to scream at each
We're
other.
going to talk about
Have
video
arguments.
games. Yeah, we're going to scream mostly, though. That's kind of the point of it.
It'll be like goats.
You roast us, we roast you. Find out more information at patreon.com/NGP podcast.
Gameplay.
At first glance, this might look like a Fire Emblem game to some, and we've played 2 on the podcast, maybe 3.
We played Sacred Stones.
Yeah, and we've
And
played,
we
SNES
played
one or NES one. One of them.
Mystery of the Emblem.
There you go. So it's not a bad starting point or comparison to make at first, but vast differences. The first big one here, and just for those who have no reference of anything, this is a top-down view of a map that has terrain, that has an enemy on one part of the map and your units on the other side, and you take turns moving those units to meet in combat or to capture objectives or points on the map, and that plays a way bigger role, and we'll get into that in this game versus Fire Emblem. But the first big difference, and one that I'm curious to ask Dustin about, is that unlike Fire Emblem, the characters from Fire Emblem in Advance Wars, those units are expendable, and that's war, unfortunately. So my question for Dustin is, do you prefer this setup to the character setup in Fire Emblem? Because I know you've had issues of feeling bombarded by a bunch of anime characters in Fire Emblem and having to decide if you want to use them or bench them. So it can be overwhelming.
I would assume that you already can guess correctly my
can.
answer. There are, I prefer the way that Advance Wars does it in the fact that I'm in no threat of losing my characters.
Right.
So if the NPCs are nameless,
Yes.
their lives
Oh,
don't matter.
Well, and they don't have a
course.
portrait or a portrait, right?
Well,
So-
okay. To be clear, there are some key characters in this
Absolutely.
game, but they are leading your armies.
Yes.
They are not necessarily fighting in, and so yes, all of your units
they're safe
are
though. They have plot
expendable.
armor.
yeah, those characters are. But in Fire Emblem, you can lose named, portraited characters all the time,
Waifus, man.
and
You know those units are full of characters that actually have names. And
no,
you're
they
sending
don't.
them off
And
to the
families.
meat- you're sending them off to the meat grinder, not thinking about the
Hey,
fact that
they
they have
signed up for
families.
it.
War
War never changes.
never changes.
That's what I'm saying.
I play Fire Emblem with such fear because I cannot make
Right.
mistakes, and
Yeah.
it's that takes away some of the enjoyment. However, I do like the character development and the vast cast of characters and so they have different stories in Fire Emblem. In Advance Wars, you don't have that as much, so I miss some of that, but it's definitely well worth the trade-off to not be in constant threat that if I make one small miscalculation that I lose someone precious to me.
Sure. Now, however, the game doesn't throw character to the side completely.
Correct.
Because, like you said, there's instead of a massive roster of cringy anime units, you have commanding officers in this game. And the first country, the first land mass, it's a returning roster from the first game. So I know all of them. Andy, Max, Sammy, and Mama Nell.
Oh,
And
all them by names.
these are commanding officers that matter in the game outside of their portraits, and they have dialogue. Kenny also, they didn't like the bombardment of that in the first play of how much dialogue there is. But
Fair.
it's a fair critique, I guess, especially for a first play. But you can,
especially early.
yeah.
There's a
I mean,
lot.
they talk a lot, and it continues to be a problem. But it's especially bad right at the beginning when they're also using their talking heads to try and like teach you mechanics of the game. Like it just becomes too much.
It's fair, and I had forgotten even how much there is. So when I booted it up, I was like, he's overreacting, and I was like, okay, there's quite a bit. But those commanding officer characters matter in how the maps play out, and we should get into that in a bit. But what's cool about this game, so the returning cast from the first, but I have forgotten in this one, they added there's other countries that are being attacked by Black Hole, and you get to play as their roster of COs as well. And
Eventually,
and they have their own strengths and specializations, and there's a lot of game here, and I had forgotten about that when I played it this week.
so you have 5 continents with their own armies: Blue Moon, Yellow Comet, Green Earth, Black
Shout out
Hole,
Green Earth.
the villains, and then you've got Orange Octopus. What is it? Orange Orangutan.
Octopus?
Orange. You've got
Orange Star.
Orange Star. Thank you.
Why are you saying sea animals?
And so you've got Orange Star. You start with Orange Star. That's the returning cast. My understanding is that Blue Moon and Yellow Comet, at least, maybe even Green Earth, were available in the War Room in the first game, but
But not
they
the
didn't
campaign
have.
mode.
Correct, not in the campaign mode. In this one, they are, as well as a few new COs too. I don't know if you get one for the Orange team, but you do for the others.
For the others,
a new CO, yeah. So like for the, who did I play second? Was it Blue? Yeah, Blue.
Mm-hmm.
You get this new like rookie. He's really young, but his dad is very wealthy, and so his abilities have to do with like increasing your wealth. Like you're able to like double your wealth with one of your powers or something like that. So which comes into play because you're controlling these armies to accomplish one of two objectives. Typically, you're either routing all enemies, destroying them, or you're capturing the enemy headquarters. There are a few stages that require you to do something unique, like take out this massive cannon or
the black cannon
black
or
cannon,
other specific objectives like that.
Two primary win conditions are kill all enemies, capture enemy headquarter, and you are using the units that you have to capture other environments to increase the funds that are coming in each and every day to purchase and build new units to send out to do these things. You've got 11 ground units, 4 air units, 4 naval units, not available at all times, especially. It felt like to me Orange Star, the whole continent, was Tutorial Island, which I didn't really love.
Pretty much was.
But a complaint of mine, if I were coming from the first game to the second, is that there's only one new unit in all of this.
Yeah, and I'm not bothered by that, though. If anything, it kind of just, I guess, proves the strength of the balance of the first game. Like, I wasn't feeling like, man, this just feels like more. They could have added more. They could have.
They could.
But that Neo tank is pretty sick if you can get it. It's really,
when you
really
add
OP.
one, it better be good.
I know. It's not easy to get a hold of, but they're sick and very useful. But I'll agree with that, actually. I could have used maybe one new ground unit type, a new vehicle unit.
Now, I didn't feel it, and I would imagine Kenny didn't either because we didn't play the first one. So there was an overwhelming amount of units.
It's all new to me, and so it was fine by me.
I just think with Tutorial Island, it felt like they were only spoon feeding, like giving you just a little at a time when they could have given you more and you figure out the units. But it's this real, it's rock paper scissors, right? That's how these games typically work. Obviously, there's terrain that comes into effect. So
there's new terrain in this one, but from the first one a lot, actually.
One, yeah. But it can increase your defensive capabilities, so you could potentially go up against someone you're not typically strong against, but due to the terrain that you're in,
Yep.
you're a little bit more protected. I had an entire chart up on my other monitor that was showing the
unit interaction strengths
yes,
and weaknesses,
exactly.
and you kind of need that, especially playing for the first time, until you like learn that stuff,
Right.
or you're gonna have a hard time with this game.
Yeah.
Because doing those interactions strategically is kind of the whole lever that you have to pull.
Yeah.
I mean, where you're going and positioning, and there's some tactics things, and making sure you have more bases for more income or whatever else is. All of that definitely comes into play as well. But your combat, my units are fighting their units, very much depends on this. One choice they made that ends up being another thing that you have to account for strategically that I really liked because it feels real, is the fact that damaged units here do less damage. They're less effective.
Damage to units do less. What?
Damaged
units. Got you. Yeah. Well,
are
because
less effective.
you
'Cause
have
there's
less in
less
that
of them.
platoon or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
And
not
so-
one unit. It's your
Right.
unit you click on is like a what's the word?
Like
Platoon.
a squadron.
I said,
of
I said
however
platoon.
many
Yeah,
people.
a platoon,
yeah,
of,
yeah, a
of
platoon.
10 militia or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Right. And so as you get less in that platoon, they do less damage and so on and so forth. And I liked that as well. It was very strategic.
yeah.
Well, another
They give you a
real.
lot of options.
Yeah, sure. And another realism thing, I guess, if since we're on that topic, is the concept of the supply unit, the APCs.
Oh
that
yeah. You
are
can run
on
out
the
of gas.
They're on the field that are used to supply your units, to make sure that you're at strength, like higher strength. And
They bring you fuel, and they also bring you
Ammo,
ammo as
yeah.
well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is
Which
consumable
is huge.
and kind of great.
and like you can also transport units, and like load and unload them. That's a concept from Fire Emblem. But I do think the rock paper scissors mechanic that you were talking about is a little more intuitive here than it is in, well, I say Fire Emblem. Once you learn Fire Emblems, it's very easy. Sword beats axe,
Yeah,
axe
but
beats lance, lance beats
that's-
sword.
And that's basically all you need to know for the Fire Emblems I've played. This is a lot more.
It's a
Yeah,
lot more.
there's a
'cause
lot
there's-
more complexity here,
Yeah.
but most of it makes sense.
Yes.
Like if
No.
It's intuitive.
yes, if I've got an anti-air type of unit,
Don't fly
it's
next to
going to do well against the stuff that flies. Like most of
but
it,
not
is
exclusively. Like
pretty intuitive.
look, you're able to tap R on top of any unit, and it gives you a data sheet for the unit.
They're so good about giving you the information you need across the board. Like your
see, I
units,
disagree.
your terrain. I felt like I could find information really easily.
I would say here's the thing: for as much information as they give you, which they give you a lot, I don't know if it's abundantly clear. So you won't know exactly what I see on a chart. Like it might say these are strong against infantry. Okay, but like that is limited. One, it doesn't tell me what it's weak against. Two, it doesn't tell me, like, there is a particular infantry that it's not great against because the infantry has a cannon and it's a mech, so it's able to do more damage. Like, it doesn't give you... Now, I know that's a lot more information, and there's already so much information, so I don't know how to do it well, but I felt like I was lacking information in-game. That's why I needed an external chart.
And there's no...
It's a fair complaint.
Did that compromise your enjoyment level to have that pulled up? Because I kind of like... I do that with a lot of games anyways.
You know I don't mind external resources.
So then...
Dustin's going to do that even if it hinders the effectiveness of the game somehow.
I looked at the manual, and I don't think it even gets nitty-gritty on strengths and weaknesses of units. I think a lot of this was meant to just kind of be like a figure-out thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine. And
It's learnable though, and it shows you when you're about to attack what the like effectiveness is.
Now I'll give
gives
it
you
that because there are some of these types of games that we played that you're kind of guessing a little bit.
Right. It's
This one gives
completely
you
obscured.
everything you need to know when you're about. So what's nice is I can plan a movement, and then I can plan an attack. And then if that percentage is 1% rather than what I was hoping at 95%, I can back out. And I didn't commit to that already, which is super nice. Like movement and attack before committing. And I thought that was super nice. So it gave me, but here's the thing. Someone that knows what they're doing, I would imagine, can go through a lot of these missions in 15 minutes. Each of these missions take me an hour or so.
They take me a long time too. I don't think
I was
15 minutes.
slower than I felt like I should be also, just because, you could feel how much less effective you could be than if you were playing like truly ideally. But that's okay. I think especially on a first playthrough, like this game gives you the option of clearing the game and then doing a hard mode. And that's there for people who want to
It's
learn
It's
every one of those
already
nuances
hard.
and
I
be
know.
perfect.
It's hard.
But yes, it is a challenging game, and you do need that information. So
There's so much I want to talk about. I want to make sure we talk about the COs. So you've got your units, you're commanding them, you're making progress, whatever, or you're being overwhelmed. There is a mechanic that your commanding officer has. It's their own unique abilities. In this one, I don't remember in the first one. I think you only have one.
Correct.
You have a super in this one, which is nice. And so I had a favorite one, and it was Sonya. And Sonya's is she can see into the fog of war, which
of War's
on
the
games
worst.
like this is fog on the map where you don't know what's in there. Like you don't know where a unit is or what they're doing or what they are.
Super frustrating mechanic in this game, especially.
It's super frustrating in Fire Emblem too. I hate fog of war. I
Thankfully,
secretly
it's
love
not
it.
on most stages.
It's not on most stages.
Right.
It's a good
It's
mechanic.
a sort of gimmick challenge here that
It
they
is.
put in occasionally, which is good. If they tried to implement it as a core thing that was
that'd be
always
rough.
in effect, this game would not work generally. So it is a specific challenge you have to take on at certain times.
So you get to see into Fog War. She can also make her units health, because there's a number on your units to indicate damage numbers and stuff like that, hidden, which I don't know how effective that is against the AI. I kind of feel like it's
probably
wasted.
not at all. Yeah.
But in multiplayer, that wouldn't matter. But the Fog of War thing is like so sick. So you can, when you charge that up, you can use it in battle, and it can really turn the events of the fight. And I love that that mechanic exists here, and it's not simply moving units around and battling them on the field.
And there's a huge variety of those CO moves, and it changes or ought to change how you play depending on which leader you have, because they're pretty impactful. And they're not just the actives. You have the star powers, but they have sort of passive changes to the strengths of certain unit types. So like Max has really strong like direct fighting capabilities, but all of the indirect units that fight sort of more like passively or from range don't do nearly as or don't shoot nearly as far for him. So like you can't use those as effectively. So you got to go and be really aggressive. The guy Dustin was talking about gets the money thing, but also gets cheaper units.
Oh.
But they're weaker, I think, as well, because of like his inexperience. So you can like get more stuff out earlier, but then it's not quite as strong. And so there's some just like strategic thoughts and payoffs you got to make there. Every single one of them have something that is unique to their character that they tie into their like character as well, or at least try to, which is great. And makes you have to adapt for who you're playing and who you're playing against as well.
The thing that's nice is after it takes you off the rails, eventually you're able to select kind of out of the characters. So you have a little bit of a clue of what kind of mission you're going into. You can look at the map beforehand, so you can kind of pick which one you want to take, which CO you want to take into battle. And then I didn't get here, but I heard much later you're able to the continents and their armies start to work together, so you're able to
there are some missions where you get to do two different people. It's pretty great.
Sweet.
It's pretty great. And at that point, the stage design, the level design is quite complex. This game series is known for having some pretty mean layouts, but I think always really well designed. And I think for me in the last few years, Fire Emblem has started to disappoint me in this department, but in the level design and map design. But this game series does it so like so well. And one of the new tiles that terrain, it's a tile, it's not really terrain in this game, that they added is this pipe system. So like think like I don't even know, like those giant pipes that transport whatever.
Yeah, like a gas pipeline.
Gas
or a water
pipeline,
pipeline.
sure. There you go. That is found in some stages that really adds a confinement aspect to the map, because there's only certain areas of it that are breakable and that are passable. So there's a lot of choke points, and those were some of the most fun maps for me, because especially the early game, Tutorial Island, as Dustin was calling it, is pretty open, and that's not my favorite style in these games. I really like when it's kind of compact and you have to really think about which choke points you want to hold and stuff like that. So did you guys like the level design?
I did. I thought it was usually intentional, especially early as they were sort of teaching you things. The placement of the enemies and like learning what they do was very on purpose. And knowing which units move better on roads and which units move better across different terrain and which ones get a benefit from hiding in the trees and which ones don't, like, would be an easy thing to kind of overlook if they don't force you to have those realizations early. And so they do. And so I agree. I thought they did a pretty nice job. Nolan, it's worth noting that as cool as their level design is, and this I know isn't the sort of primary part of the game, but an interesting thing that they included, there is a like level editor available to you in this game. So you can create and play, especially like multiplayer, like linking your GBAs together, custom games, and the inclusion of those walls to really give you a lot more like limitations on layout and flow, I think added a ton of, I don't know, just more options to do creative things there.
I experienced the manual linking and sharing of maps IRL. It was the best.
You got to actually like play this like for real as a.
It was kind
person?
of mind blowing at the time.
I'll tell you about my thoughts later. I'll just text him
about the level design.
Yeah.
You're getting there. You get your turn.
The thing that I did like, at least, is that Tutorial Island has fairly large levels, which I need because it gives me more time to think. And they are putting out units so fast and so often, so I need some time to be able to. But my understanding is that there are some stages that are pretty confined. I mean, you already described some of them with the pipes, but like, so you have to kind of act very quickly, and that's not what I'm about.
There's one Garlisle reminded me of this week. Shared it in Discord. So there's water in the middle of the stage, so it's like a lake, and each side has a 1x1 bridge that goes to the middle of the lake, and there's a small island there that has capture points on it. So it's kind of a King of the Hill style map. It's brilliant. They're so good at designing tricky but fair and sometimes questionably fair maps.
Aged.
The replayability for a game like this over the course of weeks, months, years is there, because we've already said you can play the original campaign, but you can also play the campaign in a hard mode. And then Kenny, you just mentioned that there's some multiplayer potential, but I think we even mentioned that there's a map design. Like, there's a lot of different modes here. We primarily talked about the campaign mode, but you've got versus and link mode, which are multiplayer related, but you can also just kind of heads up with the CPU. There's a design mode where you can create your own maps, but also not design your character sprites, but you can change their color scheme.
Yeah, which is really cool.
And then the war room, which is single battles that you do with the computer. But I believe in there, maybe I'm getting that one confused with versus mode, but you can like tweak some things. Also, some of these maps you don't even unlock unless you like progress in the campaign. Then you can spend some currency to get new areas to battle as well.
You also get ratings as you play through the campaign on how you do on each of the battles.
S's.
And so you can
Kenny got an S.
There's replayability to go back and make sure that you're getting as good a rating.
Yeah,
as you want.
I know. I brought it up. Kenny got an S in his first play. Why?
Of course they did.
I had forgotten.
Why? That's
And I
not
know
an S.
the fact that Kenny decided early on, I'm going to do this my way, which is okay. Hey, fine, commit,
Of
right?
course.
Commit, right? So he
Yeah,
said,
I'm the
instead
CO.
of killing the enemies in the way, I'm going to actively avoid the enemies, and I'm going
Pacifist
to go
rock.
straight to their base and take it over. He gets the guy in position. I think he even begins the capture process.
One of two,
and it
yeah.
comes down
Yeah.
to his final day where he had one of two options, and he could either finish capturing the base, which he spent the entire time setting up, or he could eliminate the enemies in the way. And he eliminates the enemies.
He wanted to show everybody what the game could offer.
No, it was not that.
I'm trying to help
It
you.
was-
No?
No, it
Okay,
was.
then I don't
was
have your back.
adapting to the story. I was very much trying to steal their headquarters, but as soon as their enemy ran past me and got into my headquarters, there was no way I was letting him live.
I
That
just
is
can't believe that
inexcusable.
you're
Get
doing
out
that.
of my home. And the fact that I killed him and won, but in the non-ideal way, apparently triggered Dustin. So
I'm glad
now you know how to get under his skin.
Ridiculous. Also, there's some. We're not going to get into it, but there's some lore about how Kenny ended up recording that we
Oh
won't
my
talk about.
goodness.
It's ridiculous. I'm glad you went there, Dustin,
True.
with the replayability aspect, because I can't stress enough how cool the map builder and then the sharing of those maps was. Like, the game's this big, okay? It's a GBA cartridge.
Physically.
A lot of game in this game. Like,
There is, but we're
Unreal.
talking about aged, and a lot of that is great
Hey.
when you're playing with somebody on a GBA
Hey.
and you got cables to
you
hook
still
up
can't,
together.
Dustin. I'll tell you why in a bit.
I'm sure there's a way, but it's not as easy to jump into playing multiplayer today.
There's an
in
even
most
easier
cases.
way, actually.
Even easier, yeah.
The wars. Well, I'll just go ahead and say it, and then you can continue there, because I do think there's something to be said about that. Yes, the original version with your GBAs and a cartridge that small, it's difficult probably to share maps today. However, this war 1 and 2, Advance Wars 1 and 2, were remade and repackaged together as Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which they've got to get help with their titles.
What is wrong
they
with
do.
that?
That was
Reboot
done-
Camp
Why
is
would you-
great.
No, if you're gonna say 1+2, you should just say 3.
That's
That's
crazy.
bad too.
Y'all are insane.
This was just last year when it was released, and
Yeah,
so
it's
reboot, however, changes some things that fans were kind of split on.
I
so
heard,
it changes,
yeah.
changes the graphics, it updates the OST, adds voice acting, tweaks some of the maps a little bit. And I didn't test this, but I would imagine that you can make and share maps very easy through there.
Probably, yeah, it's probably as
Most
easy as
likely,
ever.
yeah.
You can't. I guarantee you. I didn't look it up. I should have. I guarantee you, there's a website or some community that still shares these that you just use on emulator
probably
and
right,
play
yeah.
Some
anything.
kind of like repository of
course.
cool, well-designed maps.
Yeah, yeah.
Suppository.
No doubt.
suppository.
Gross.
Now back to the GBA though. Graphics. I mean, just GBA perfection in my opinion. I'm curious to hear what y'all have to say. Be careful.
They're simple, but they look good, and the simplicity serves what the game is trying to accomplish, and so it works for me. I don't think they're like the most artistic things ever, but they're well done, and I have no problems with it. They look good, and they do what they're supposed to, and it's nice looking. Yeah.
Do you accept that, Nolan?
No. All I heard was it looks stupid and bad.
I think graphics is where this game might shine most. I think, okay, so the overworld and what you're looking at the majority of the time, I agree that is probably simplistic, but the colors pop, you know exactly what you're looking at. You don't need anything incredibly dynamic. It's got,
Correct.
it completely serves its purpose, but does it while looking good, like pleasant. I think where it shines is your character portraits, your like the out of those battle kind of things. I think that design, there is some, I don't know what it's called, but it's this like, yeah, it's cartoony, a little bit, I don't know, shiny, bubbly. I don't really know how to define it or describe it, but I absolutely love the art direction in this game.
Ryo Harada is the artist for this game, and I tried to look up their history, with games, because I agree. I love this style, and it's been hard for me to pinpoint. It is almost it's almost Mega Man Zero and later, Mega Man X and later art style.
Okay.
It reminds me a lot of those newer Mega Man models. Battle Network, actually, specifically. The character models in that game look like the ones in this one. I couldn't find a connection, but maybe I love the character models. I also love the in-combat animations, kind of bigger sprite work that you get to see. Although, if you're a Giga Chad, you turn those off for speed. Anyways, but I just think the game pops.
It's like this anime,
But cool.
but bubble.
Just kidding.
You,
I'm just
there
kidding.
are a few groups of fans that you don't.
I love
frustrate.
anime fans.
It's
Come
the
on.
Swift fans and it's the anime
I love the
fans.
anime community.
Yeah, no, I love the graphics here. I think it's where it shines, and I think
Yeah.
that's why some people don't like some of the graphics on the remake.
I could see that.
I like it, and I don't know if anyone else has made this comparison. I looked up just some of the battles. The overworld map, they really changed a lot, and it looks, to me, like Paper Mario vibes. Like it's
Makes
got
sense.
like a
Interesting.
sketch kind of vibe, and I think it's cool.
I need to check it out. I
I'll
want
have
to
to
play
look.
it. I probably would be in the camp that prefers the original at the end of the day, but I'm not gonna not like it.
You know what would be cool, especially in a game like this, and maybe you can, if you could play through a two-player team campaign mode where like I've got one of the armies, you've got another, and it's built around that. Like that would be
That
cool.
would be sick.
That'd be fun.
I should have called you.
The OST is fitting, if not a bit redundant.
Yeah,
I
I,
think
won't
that's fair.
accept that.
Well, you've got to. I think each continent has one theme that plays the majority of the battle. So it will change when things are heated or when it's nearing the end or whatever. But most of the time, in all 8 of the battles you're doing on that continent or whatever, you're hearing the same track over and over and over again.
Yeah, it is fitting though. Like you said,
It is. It is.
like you said, I do think it works. I would have loved if these games just threw a off the wall soundtrack on here, like something very jazzy or like soulful or something. That would have been really
Hey.
fun, and I could
Yeah.
see that also fitting. But it's a good soundtrack. I think it's not like
It
something
is.
I listen to often or will
Yeah.
go to, but I would enjoy if I heard it.
Yeah. Kenny, any opinions on the...
Yeah, no, I agree. I already said I agree with you, and I do
Yeah.
completely.
But I think like it's good, right? I mean, like it
Yeah.
completely serves its
Yeah.
purpose.
And
There's some
when you
good
think
tracks
about
there.
everything else they packed into the game, I can forgive them a little bit for not having like a million tracks that
Sure.
swap out often or whatever.
We already talked about its replayability through the remake, the reboot camp. But there's other games in the series. This series actually started, so it's the Wars series. It predates the
Nintendo
GBA.
Wars.
Famicom Wars, yeah.
Famicom Wars.
In 1988.
I
Like-
see. I didn't know that bit of lore actually.
Old.
Yeah, this series is the precursor to Fire Emblem, not the other way around, which I
is that
wouldn't
true?
have guessed.
I think
Fire Emblem's old, too.
older than that, maybe even.
I don't think so. I think this one
Oh,
came
okay.
It
first.
sounds like he looked it up, which is crazy. Whoa, that's actually super interesting. I think though that the series, now maybe the reboot has brought more attention to it, and maybe it will continue. But I've heard that the series is done. Like the last new game in the series was what? Was it 2008? Let me look
Dual
real quick. It was 2008. Advance Wars: Days of Ruin and Dark Conflict. Wait, yeah. Wait, and
Or
maybe
what am
that
I
was
talking
even
about?
canceled. Hold on. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I thought one was called like Dual Attack or Dual Strike or something.
Dual
like that.
Strike was 2003, brother, or 2006.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Well, yeah.
No,
So
what?
that was after this
Oh.
one, and then I think
Oh, right.
one. I've never heard of the one you're talking about.
It may have been canceled. Originally only released in North America and PAL regions. A Japanese release date was planned, but later canceled. Yeah, you're right. Then the last one, and I don't know, some people count Battalion Wars as a part of it.
I don't know what that is either.
Okay. But yeah, the last Advance Wars was Nintendo DS in 2005. I said 6. Excuse me.
Is that one Black Hole Setting?
I'm not gonna answer that question. But there is a quote from the creator of this series that says, "I don't know." When asked like, "Would you bring it back?"
Yeah.
They said something to the effect of, "I don't know." Because I don't know how we would be able to bring romance into a game like this. In some way, in his mind, yes, he did. He thinks that you've got to have romance in these games because
he said
people love to pet in Fire Emblem. Yes.
He said romance.
He said romance.
That's so funny. I get the where does this game fit in modern
I don't know.
gaming?
I think it does.
And the answer is not. It doesn't have a place anymore, or that it can't fit because romance is a prerequisite. The answer is they just need to move to mobile if they were going to continue this series.
No. He's got a strong point.
No.
The player base for this type of game
We played it on mobile this week.
Is your Clash of Clans fans, not your
it's not
real time, not your PoE fans. Yeah, it is.
I agree.
And I know you don't like that, but that's where, if it were to continue going, it would end up.
No. This is it's fine that the series is done. I'm actually shocked they did the remake, and we should be happy with the games we got. These are really good, and they don't need to keep going. It's fine. It doesn't need to be a mobile game. Get out of here.
Just add romance and put it on your phone.
Yeah, make it so that I can marry Nell, and that's it.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. Kenny, what did you think of Black Hole Rising?
Yeah, I enjoyed this game. I thought going into it being a strategy game on the GBA, I was going to enjoy it the most of all of us. That's probably not true. That's not to say I didn't have fun. I did. I like the genre. It worked for me. It's a well-made game. Definitely has some replayability. Definitely had me thinking and being strategic and feeling like the choices I made mattered. That's a huge thing for me in games. And I enjoyed myself. Great series. Thought it was going to be one of my favorite games of all time. But just a solid game that I'm glad we have gotten to play. Not like a top 20 for me or anything revolutionary. So yes, in GP, but with the caveat of I actually came in with very high expectations, and I don't know if it quite met them for me personally.
He's literally just upset that it's not a RTS. It's a tournament.
I'm not. I think this game as a real-time game would actually stress me out. I think not as much as Dustin, but it would change the vibe of the game significantly, and I'm glad it wasn't. I needed to be able to think through moves and be thoughtful and strategic, and so yeah, I'm glad for this game that it wasn't.
I've got a problem, and it is that I want to play games perfectly, and so that's why I've used manuals throughout my life. I don't want to miss an item. I don't want to miss a summon, whatever. It's why I've used walkthroughs. That's why GameFAQs is my favorite bookmarked website. That's why all of these things. And so when you play games like this, where yes, they can be perfectly, but they're not made to be played perfectly necessarily. They're made to explore and to learn and to grow and get better and try again. Even that they stress me out, even if it's turn-based. The thing that's nice here, even with the original game, is that you can save at any time. So you can save. If something goes wrong, you can go back to that save from a couple moves ago, which is so nice. It's basically your quick save, but on the GBA, super nice. I was stressed this week. I was using a guide this week. That was nice because it gave me general ideas. Because I would imagine that the computer doesn't operate the same way every single time. It probably works with the moves that you're doing, I would assume.
Yeah.
And so it gives you general ideas. So it was a good balance for me. I was stressed, but I enjoyed it. And I think this is a great example of this genre and a game for the GBA. It's another really strong entry on the GBA. This genre is still not for me. I respect it. I love the idea. It's chess kind of which is not how it stresses me out and it's not enjoyable. But I love to look at it, watch it, explore it a little bit, but would never play someone else because they would absolutely trounce me. Unless it's me playing chess against Kenny. I
Oh wow.
think Advance Wars
Definitely
2
not me,
is a really good game and a really good entry on the GBA. If there's a better Advance Wars, I'd be very interested in checking that one out.
Chess is way more elegant, and that's almost offensive to not surprised. I'm actually a little bit surprised that your bar, I think, felt low and it exceeded it, and mine felt high, and maybe we came to a similar place, but our bars were misplaced.
But it's New Game Plus from both of us. And then Nolan, who I guess this is more in line with, like just more at home with this console, of course, but also maybe this series and genre. What are your final words?
Yeah, this is easily like a quintessential GBA game to play, along with the first one. My favorite, in case you're curious, after playing, I didn't beat this one. I would say the first one, but that's probably just nostalgia. I mean, I played this one back then too, but it's a extremely well-rounded game. It is great to look at. It functions really well. It gets you to think. There's so much replayability. One of the most, like, again, GBA game, like you're not going to that console for that, and this game's giving it to you anyways. So like, yeah, I think it's a must play. So easy NGP.
That means that Advance Wars 2 Black Hole Rising is New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? On our YouTube poll, 54% said yes, only 1% said no, go play something else, and 44% have never played it before.
That 1% was like, this game doesn't have romance or petting. Yeah.
And it was the director and designer of the
It was
game.
him.
Yeah. He was like, I got it wrong.
That's a lot of
I got
people
it
that
wrong.
played this game. So this series
Oh,
must
yeah.
have
It is.
been popular.
It was popping.
And then from our community, many wrote in, and I think a new record, not of how many wrote in, because that was last week,
Yeah.
but on how many new people wrote in,
Oh,
or wrote
fun.
in for the first time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like it.
Welcome.
A Lazy Tree said Advance Wars 2 was the first video game I ever owned, so I'm super stoked you guys pulled it this week, and I'm very interested in your/the community's thoughts. As a kid, I enjoyed it, but found that later levels extremely challenging. Coming back to it this week, I still found it really hard, but the nostalgia was great. I'm a big fan of the super abilities as a unique twist, and map building is always fun. Being able to do multiplayer on a single Game Boy Advance back in the day was great when link cables were hard to come by. NG Plus from me for sure.
Forgot to mention those super abilities are so anime. Like they show up on the screen. There's like, motion behind them. And
Yeah,
then
the
do
title
something
comes
crazy.
across, yeah.
It's awesome.
Not sure 7777 said I enjoyed this game, though the campaign mode had too many dialogues and tutorials for me.
Oh no, reading.
I ended up finding the
It's
war
true.
room much more enjoyable because I could get straight into the action. I even played around with the map editor and had some fun with that. Overall, great turn-based strategy in GP.
Y'all need to read more books.
Jukinator said, not, by the way, Kenny just did a double thumbs up for those of you that are listening on an audio podcast.
They knew. They heard the thumb up.
They heard it.
Jukinator said, not big on strategy games. And I've never played an AW game, but I love Game Boys. So I put a few hours in this week playing on original hardware with an emulator cartridge.
Fun.
We are reporting you to the police. First stages of the campaign are simple and have a lot of dialogue, but after 4 or so, things get more interesting. After getting sucked in and enjoying my first few hours of gameplay, I found myself hitting a wall with stage 8, and after 4 failed attempts, I think it's time for me to put the game down. Maybe I'm just not a proper strategist like Kenny. Music is great, visuals are clear and colorful, surprisingly engaging for a handheld title. NGP for sure. I had fun until it made me feel dumb.
Okay. I'm glad you picked it up at least for a little bit. That's fine.
And finally, Demon Kingu said, I've been a listener of NGP ever since I tried to find the Might and Magic 7 soundtrack on Spotify and found your podcast instead.
Hey, you're welcome.
But since the game of the week, we should do a whole campaign that is search on Spotify for your favorite video game soundtrack from your past, and they'll
Yeah.
find our podcast.
That's not a bad idea.
But since the game of the week is Advance Wars 2, I just had to finally write in. This game has meant a lot to me through the years and got me to join the Advance Wars fan community that still exists today. AW2 is more refined than its predecessor, but kept to the plucky, colorful charm the first title introduced. The CO system is what sets this strategy game apart, in my opinion. The re-release of Reboot Camp, I think, is proof that this game still holds up even to modern game titles today, and for me, is absolutely in GP.
Nice. Yeah, I'm so surprised by that reboot or remake.
You should get it and play
I
it.
should. I will eventually, for sure.
For now, we're setting aside Advance Wars 2 Black Hole Rising, and we are not randomly selecting from our retro master list,
man,
which I
this is
believe I saw this
hype.
week has 4,300 something games on it. We are selecting from a much, much, much smaller pool. In fact, our smallest pool ever. It is our producer poll!
One more dip in the trunks?
One
One more dip.
in the hot tub.
All right.
And did you say swim trunks?
Yeah, I said put on the trunks, one more dip.
Not for this one.
No? Fully clothed.
We're going in bare because we get to spend 2 weeks in the hot tub.
Bear, we're going to be pruny?
We about to get wrinkly.
Yeah.
So this game is going to be played for 2 weeks because next week you're in
Okay.
for a treat. We're going to have Retro Recap 18 coming around. But for this producer pool, we've got some stats by Shane.
Stats by Shane.
And they might surprise you. Not this first bit. The console with the most votes at 26%, the PC.
PlayStation 2. Oh.
PC has always been up there.
Yeah, PC's up there
PC
for
is
some
always
reason.
up there.
This
yeah.
is what's going to surprise you because the second is not PlayStation or PlayStation 2.
Okay, that does surprise me.
It is GameCube.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy about that.
Okay. We've got... they didn't really come together. We had a few that came together. So the only games that have more than 2 entries are Fable, Planescape Torment, Cave Story, and The Guardian Legend. Games that we've basically seen before.
We do have some doubles, though. So
We
that
have a
helps
few,
in
yeah.
a smaller pool, for sure.
We also have games like Wave Race 64 from Klin,
Ooh.
Castlevania 3 from Siegfried,
Yeah.
Metroid Prime 2 from Guardian Cade,
Okay.
and Luigi's Mansion from Super Hypered.
Wow.
I've never played a Luigi's Mansion before.
Oh.
I'm secretly hoping for Cave Story.
Oh, me too. I would love for you guys to play the game.
Well, we will now find out what we are going to be playing for the next 2 weeks. And to end this producer poll and the Summer of Weird, it all comes to a head here. Randomizing now. We're going to one of Nolan's favorite years of video gaming, 1998.
Whoa.
Good year.
We're
Could also
not going to
mean
his
nothing.
console. We're going to mine, the PlayStation.
Okay.
The interesting thing about this game, among many things, is that it was never released outside of Japan.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay. I've been brushing up on my Japanese, so we're good to
What?
go.
Say one
No,
thing.
I have not.
It is an exploration game
What does that mean?
conceived by an artist who rejected the idea of games and wanted
Oh,
to use the
no.
PlayStation as a medium for creating contemporary art.
Oh
Ew,
no.
shut up.
We're
I'll slap you in the
finishing
face.
our summer of weird.
This is, by title alone, likely the weirdest game that we've ever played.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's themed.
And it is on the verge of not being appropriate for New Game Plus.
wow.
Because the game that we're playing for the next 7 days, submitted by Retroman, is LSD, Dream Emulator.
Okay, so color a dinosaur
On
for
drugs.
on drugs for adults on a more modern system.
Color
Just say
dinosaur's
color a
already
dinosaur for
for
adults.
on
That's
drugs.
a good
Color a
good
dinosaur
tagline.
for adults. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about it other than I've seen the title because people, like, it's known because of how absurd it is, I assume.
Weird.
For 2 weeks, go on a trip with us
God, for
as
2
we
weeks.
play LSD Dream Emulator.
Join us in Discord. Discord.gg/NewGamePlus.
He's already just completely out of his mind. We want to say thank you to those of you who support us on patreon.com, including our newest patrons this week, Don Queso.
need
Great
some of
name.
that.
Slightly cheesy, but I'll give it to you. And Benoit Dussault. Apologies if my French is poor. Thank you to our director level supporters, Bro Jim, Super Hyper, Siegfried, and Scotty, and to our many producer level supporters as well, including Alex, Alias X, Marlene, Antonin, Arlen, Yuki, Ben, Craig, Dustin's 5 o'clock, Shadow, Garlisle, Guardian, Cade, Hallex, Harold, Hey Brother, J. Robert, Jake, Jordan, Joey, Justified, Justin, Clint, Levi, Marcus, Maxima, Megatroid, Miss Muso, Not Enough Dog, Retro Man, Sage, and Sasser, Shane, Shauna, Snakematic, Stephen Fox, Psycho Manus, Tens, The Kentucky Kid, Thomas Turtle, Unbedavable, and Zion. The fact that that is such a mouthful is truly an honor. We appreciate you and your support.
You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. The links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you're the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our episode artwork was created by Dave. Video episode was edited by Dylan. And our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week for a retro recap. Join us the week after for LSD Dream Emulator. Until then, I'm still Andy.
I'm still Orange Starfish.
So Kenny.
And this has been New Game Plus.